All right, looks like we can get started. All right, so I want to introduce Alvin today. Alvin Irby is a former kindergarten teacher turned award-winning social entrepreneur, international speaker, comedian, and author. As founder of the Barbershop books, he was awarded the National Book Foundation's Innovations in Reading Prize. Irby's keynotes and professional development workshops help school districts, library systems, and educational organizations create relevant and engaging learning experiences for all students. Irby received an MS in childhood education from Bank Street Graduate School of Education and an MPA in public and nonprofit management and policy from New York University's Robert F. Wagner School of Public Service. I'm very excited about our topic today, and I'm going to turn it on over to you, Alvin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lori. I'm really excited to speak to you about today's topic, cultivating the reading identity of Black boys in post-pandemic America. I would like to start today's session by sharing a little bit of background information about me. Often, people will talk about the importance of being objective. And today, I just want to let you know that I'm going to tell you about some experiences, both personal, professional, from the work that I've been doing with Barbershop Books, as well as some of my classroom experiences, and how those experiences have shaped my thinking and the work that I do with Barbershop Books. And so with that, I want to go ahead and hop on in. Let's see. So I am originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, born and raised. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and she recently retired from the Little Rock School District after teaching for more than 30 years. So from a very young age, I knew how to put a bulletin board up. Next, I left Little Rock and made my way to Grinnell College, where I studied sociology and economics. And I absolutely feel like a lot of the work that I did, a lot of the books that I read have had an impact on a lot of my thinking about society, about learning in society, and about some of the kind of systemic educational injustices and obstacles that Black boys and other vulnerable children face. From Grinnell in Iowa, I made my way to New York City, where I began a graduate program at Bank Street. I also had the opportunity to actually teach in the Bank Street School for Children, which is an amazing independent school in Manhattan. And this was my very first kind of classroom teaching experience as an assistant teacher in an independent school. And so it was really a valuable experience for me. From there, I made my way up to the Bronx, where I taught first grade. So before at Bank Street, I taught fourth grade or what they call the 9s, 10s. And then I taught first grade at a traditional public school in the Bronx in New York City. And then after that, I taught kindergarten at KIPP Infinity Elementary School in Harlem. And so by this time in my kind of professional and educational journey, I had the opportunity to teach in an independent school, in a traditional public school, and in a charter school. And so those three kind of classroom experiences and school settings, I think really have shaped a lot of my thinking about reading, about learning, about students, and supporting communities and families. From teaching kindergarten, I took a position as the education director at the Boys Club of New York, where I was an education director. I oversaw after school and summer educational programs. Now, why in the world am I telling you all of this stuff before we get into the meat of the topic today? Well, it's because I believe that we all carry with us experiences that influence our thinking, our beliefs. And so I don't want to hide it. I want you all to know exactly what the experiences are that inform the information I'm going to share with you today. Now, before I go on, there is something really important I want to share about this image. When I first started at the boys club, many of the boys were not going into the library for anything. They weren't really using it. And so one of the first things that I did was I put a colorful classroom rug down, and I put sports themed bean bags. Now, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the Boys Club of New York, it is one of the oldest nonprofits in New York City. They were founded in the late 1800s, and they only serve boys ages 6 all the way up to 21. And so as I was thinking about what I could do to get more boys to come into the library, I decided to, purchase these sports themed bean bags. And interestingly, many boys started coming into the library and reading without anyone requiring or forcing them to, simply by changes in the environment that they kind of felt were relevant and engaging for them. And so, as we go through today's talk, that's just something that I want you to keep in mind, thinking about, what are some of the low-hanging fruit, right? What are some of the things that, without hiring a lot of staff or making any type of large changes, could lead to making reading and reading experiences more relevant and more engaging for Black boys and for other children. So I'm gonna go on to the next item. So I transitioned from being an education director at the Boys Club of New York to going back to grad school to study nonprofit management. And it was at NYU Wagner that I founded the organization that I run today, which is Barbershop Books. And so, the idea for Barbershop Books really came about when I was teaching first grade in the Bronx. I was getting a haircut at a barbershop across the street from the school where I taught first grade. And one of my first grade students came into the barbershop, plopped down on the sofa, and he started, looking bored and getting antsy. His mom was like, "Sit down." And the whole time I was, seeing this, all I kept thinking is, "Oh, I wished I had a children's book to give him because he should be practicing his reading." But I didn't have a book. And so I said to myself, someone should, put children's books in barbershops. Now, fast forward several years later, I ended up creating Barbershop Books and implementing the idea that I had of promoting and supporting reading in barbershops. And so I'm going to share a little bit with you about the work that Barbershop Books does and some of the insights that we gained from it. So at the very beginning, I just started walking around putting children's books in barbershops. But I learned very quickly that there were a lot of things about supporting reading, about encouraging and promoting promoting reading and supporting early literacy that barbers just didn't know. Or maybe some of the things that they felt were kind of intuitive about how to get kids reading didn't line up with the science of reading, or some of the things that, as educators, we know will get kids excited about reading. And so it was at that point that, we realized, what, we need to provide some type of professional development to barbers. And so one of the things that Barbershop Books does is provides early literacy training to barbers. And there are lots of people who want little Black boys to read: librarians, teachers, parents, of course, but not everybody knows what to say to a room full of Black barbers about reading that will help them understand how they can best support reading. And so, one of the things that I think is going to be a through line, right, or a theme as we go through the content that I'm going to share today, is the idea that it's not enough for us just to know what we want Black boys to do, or know what we want Black boys to learn, or to be able to experience in terms of reading. But we really have to be really intentional about creating the types of experiences and the type of communication that they will find relevant and engaging, as well as communication and experiences that the communities in which they live and the parents, right, that they also will find relevant and engaging. So during the pandemic, Barbershop Books was not able to have bookshelves because, parents were not very excited about allowing their child to, touch communal objects in a public space. And so we developed a program flyer, and we also began distributing book packets to help children start home libraries, or to expand their home libraries, during the pandemic. And that is what we are doing right now, is continuing to provide our participating barbershops with curated lists of books in book packets that were recommended. The books were recommended by Black boys, and the barbers distribute them to the children who come into their shops. And then the poster that we designed was really designed to support children in support adults in initiating conversations with children about reading. The Barbershop Books program also launched an e-library during the pandemic. And our e-library has about 16 independently published ebooks by Black and Brown authors. They were all donated by authors who during the pandemic said, we want to make this content available to as many children as possible. And so the poster has a QR code that allows children or adults in the barbershops to just scan them with their personal device and access our e-library, which has these ebooks and also fun read aloud videos. We also partnered with America's largest online retailer of used books, Thrift Books, and they are donating 20,000 books, curated books a year to Barbershop Books. And so we curate and distribute those books for free to schools and community-based organizations across the country. And for us, the curation and ensuring that the quality of the books were, high quality was really critical to the partnership and critical to the work that we do at Barbershop Books in terms of getting the books that Black boys and other vulnerable children really want to read into their hands and into the spaces where they go. So I mentioned that we launched an e-library. Well, our e-library contains over 75 read aloud videos. Many of them you will see me in, during the pandemic. Like many other literacy organizations, we were reading, doing read aloud videos to make sure that children, even if they had limited access to books, could still, get quality read aloud experiences. So those are also accessible to anyone who has the internet and at our barbershops through the QR code that's on our program poster. So another program that Barbershop Books developed during the pandemic, we were very busy. It's called Reading So Lit Classroom. And it's a K-3 supplemental literacy program that integrates social emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching, and imaginative play. We hired a professional illustrator to create original characters. We also surveyed boys, Black boys, other boys of color, to solicit their input in how the characters look, to ensure that, again, that the content we were developing was relevant and engaging for Black boys and for other children. Here is a picture of the 4 characters in the program. Why did we go through the work of, hiring an illustrator to create original characters? Well, one of the values at Barbershop Books is providing children with relevant reading role models. Relevant reading role models. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that, often children, find it challenging to be what they can't see, to do things that they haven't been experienced to. And so the work that we do doesn't involve, diversifying the pipeline of into early childhood education or that sort of thing. So we can't control, the teachers or the diversity of schools or programs, but we can control what our content looks like. And so it was really important to us to ensure that we had content that participants would really find interesting and engaging. So that is my background. That is a little information about Barbershop Books and the work that we do. Now I want to really dive into some detail of the topic for today, which is about cultivating the reading identity of Black boys. And so I want to start by just talking about the reality of education and literacy in America right now. And that reality is that far too often, where a child is born, which zip code, which side of the tracks they happen to be born on, far too often it dictates whether or not that child receives the early literacy support and resources that those students need to be successful. And so, on one side of the track, you have students who are essentially doing the very best that they can to try and, swim, right? To learn and read under circumstances that are really challenging, whether that be, poverty, whether it be under-resourced schools, understaffed schools, or communities that don't have access to books, right? There are any number of challenges that can, inhibit or get in the way of children becoming proficient readers, but there are always children who are great swimmers, right? Who are resilient and who find ways in spite of to do well. But there are a lot of children who need so much more support to ensure that they do well. So there are children who, in many cases, are just, treading water, doing the best they can. And then there are children who have lots and lots of supports. Now, I want to talk about what supports look like. Now, I know some of you are wondering, why in the world do I have these pictures up here? Well, I want to talk to you about one of the supports, and that is peers. When I was in high school, in 10th grade, there were 2 junior females at my school who came up to me, independent of each other, unsolicited. And one of them said, "Alvin, I think you're really smart. I think you should take this AP history class with Miss Green." And then another student came up to me and said, "Alvin, you're really smart. I think you should take AP English with Miss McKinnon." And I remember thinking to myself, why are all these girls coming up to me recommending classes when I didn't ask anybody for any recommendations? And I took a step back and I remember thinking to myself, because I had no plans of taking any type of advanced placement classes my junior year, but I remember taking a step back and thinking to myself, maybe these students, my peers, maybe they see something in me that I didn't see in myself. Why is this relevant for Black boys? Well, even if we're the best teacher in the world, even if we create the best program in the world, there are always things that other children can say, other ways that they can model different things for their peers that we might not even think about, that we might not have even considered, but could be the very thing that, turns on that light bulb, or that motivates a particular student to read for fun, or to keep going when they want to stop, right? Or that gets them really, really excited about something. And so the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because so much for me about creating these kind of transformative reading experiences that really help Black boys to identify as readers is really about being humble, exercising humility, and being willing to say, you know what, I think this is what may be relevant or engaging, but I'm open to the possibility that I could learn something new from the students, from the parents, from the community, right? That could lead to the outcomes that I want. So another story I want to share with you that's relevant. When I did end up taking those 2 classes that were recommended to me. Just to give you a little bit more context about why this is so important, I was not a reader, as a child. I didn't, in elementary school, I did not read for fun. I really viewed reading as something that was, a chore. It was something that was for school and that was required. But I really didn't identify as a reader. But some of these experiences that I'm sharing with you are some of those critical moments, critical experiences that really cultivated my identity as a reader. And so when I eventually took this advanced placement English class in Little Rock at my high school, I took the ACT, right, the standardized test to get into college for the very first time, and I scored a 16 in reading. And in Arkansas, if you score below a 19 in reading, you have to take remedial classes in college, meaning you have to pay for classes for which you receive no college credit just to help you get on the level that you should be on for college work. And so I remember scoring a 16 in reading, and I took my test results to Miss McKinnon, my English teacher. And I said, Miss McKinnon, I can't get into anybody's college with these low reading scores. What can I do to help get my reading up? And she didn't say, let me administer an assessment. That wasn't the first thing she said. She turned around and started rummaging behind her desk. And let me just tell you, behind her desk looked crazy. She had stuff everywhere, but it was that organized chaos, right? And so she reached behind her desk and she pulled out this book. And I remember looking at the book and looking at her, and I said, The Hobbit? What's a Hobbit? Now, because that was just the kind of student that I was. And she said, Alvin, just read the book. Just read the book. And so I went off on winter break and I read it. And when I got back to class, I was so upset. I was like, Miss McKinnon, how are you going to give me a book like this? What happens to the ring? What happens to the ring? How can a book just end like that? And she's like, Alvin, calm down. All you have to do is read the other books. And I'm like, what other books? She's like, the Lord of the Rings series. Now, my English teacher knew enough about me as a person, maybe even as a reader, that she knew that her just giving me a little test prep probably wasn't going to be enough. But that if I was going to do better in reading, do better on the ACT, do better on reading in college, I was going to need to read a lot more on my own. And so she did something that I believe she knew or believed would increase my motivation to read for fun. And so as we think about, well, what can we do to help more Black boys to read? I think not just stopping at what we think Black boys should read, but really creating innovative ways to find out, if you ask them, what do they really say they want to read? What do they say that they find exciting or that interests them? Now, as was mentioned in my bio, I am a stand-up comedian. I've been performing stand-up comedy for the past 12 years. This is a picture of me at the Hollywood Improv in Los Angeles. And one of the things that I've learned from my time doing stand-up is that when you're in front of an audience, you have an obligation to make the content that you're sharing with them relevant and engaging. You know, as a comedian, you have the mic, and as a teacher, you essentially have the mic, you have the floor. And just because you have a mic or you have authority or a title or position, that does not absolve us of the responsibility to make something relevant and engaging. And the example that I like to share is that, you know, when I'm performing, let's say at a church, I could tell bar jokes, but it may not result in laughter. And so when I think about kind of some of the challenges that so many Black boys face as it relates to, you know, reading and reading proficiency and motivation to read, often I think about comedy, and stand-up comedy to be exact, and I think about how in too many cases, we're creating reading experiences that are the equivalent of telling bar jokes in a church, right? And then wondering, like, why aren't they reading more? Why aren't they more engaged? Why aren't they reading more at home? And so, you know, this is not a indictment of anyone or any institution, but more a challenge for us to really, you know, take the time and the kind of create opportunities to get input from Black boys. Three questions that I often like to ask myself, and that I think we should all ask ourselves when we have to communicate information to, you know, any child, not just Black boys, but anyone in general, is, you know, will this be relevant? You know, will this be engaging? And will this be fun? Those are questions that, you know, are really, really, you know, important. Let's see here. So I want to take one, like a little second to show you all a video. I hope that I can find the time here, and then I'm gonna just share a little note about this video. Here we go.
Really great rhyming ears. Let's see. So he wants something that's usually weird. What? You want me to keep reading? Yeah. You called them boogers. Called them delicious. Let's look at her. Oh my goodness. His sister's like, ugh, Greg, you nasty.
So this video is a video of me reading my children's book, Gross Greg, for a group of first graders in Milwaukee. And I'd never met them before doing this read aloud, but I was reading my children's book. And one of the things that I want to draw your attention to is the laughter. They laughed throughout the book, but one of the things that got the most laughter was an ad lib that I added, where I provided commentary about the face of the sister. One of the children pointed out that she looked grossed out. And so I said, yes, his sister looks like she's saying, ugh, Greg, you nasty. Why is this important? Why is this relevant? Well, it's not just enough to have diverse books. That is an essential and a critical first step. But we also, when thinking about how to cultivate the reader identity of Black boys, we also need to think about what does the quality of those read alouds and those reading experiences look like. Now, I am not advocating by any means that any white teacher run out and go watch YouTube to acquire an ethnic accent so that whenever they read a diverse book, they can change their voice. But what I do want you to think about is that generally, teachers read with a lot more expression when they're reading something that they identify with and that they feel familiar with. So what that means is that for a white teacher reading my children's book, she probably would never do a voice like that to describe the sister. What does that mean for the Black children in that classroom? It may mean that for some children, they may never experience a book in a certain way. Now, I don't think that anyone should feel bad about that. This is just the reality. We all read content that we identify with, or that we, characters that we find, really, relevant to us. We usually, are a bit more expressive. But what I do think it points out for me is the importance of having guest readers and creating opportunities in our programs, in the classroom, for people who may not look like us, or people who may look like the students we serve, to come in and read books, right? Because guess what? They may read it a little bit differently than the way we would read it. And some ones read aloud, may be the very thing. Some guest readers read aloud could be the very thing that unlocks that motivation and that inspiration to read for certain children. So that's just something to point out, that it's not enough just to stop at the diversity of the books, but we also need to think about the diversity of the read alouds and the diversity of the people who are reading the books to the children, to make sure that children are seeing a diversity of ways of engaging with content and with text. Now, children, I believe, at a younger and younger age, are finding themselves at a crossroad where they are being almost forced to make a decision about whether or not this thing called school, or this thing called learning, or this thing called reading is for them, or whether or not it's something that they identify with. And, why is it important for us to bring the children, their input, their interests, their concerns, the community, their interests, their concerns into the work that we do? Well, because it helps bridge the cultural divide. No adult is perfectly aligned culturally with the students that they serve, whether it's, economic differences, or it's, racial or regional differences, right? In terms of where you grew up versus where they grew up. There are all types of things that can, create a divide when we're looking to, teach children or inspire children to read. And when we take the time, right, to make the reading experiences, the reading instruction, the reading content more relevant and more engaging, it helps to close any cultural divides that exist. And this isn't easy. I don't want you all to get the idea that this is something you could just learn in a workshop. But this is more a long-term commitment and an ongoing commitment to just be a learner, right? To acknowledge that, I can actually learn a little bit more about how to make this more relevant, more engaging, how to be a bit better in terms of curating the books that I select than I was yesterday. A growth mindset is what I'm kind of alluding to. I am running a little slow on time, so I want to go ahead and jump here. Running slow on time. That is not what I want to say. And when I talk to people about the work that we do at Barbershop Books, or just educators in general, parents, sometimes I encounter people who will say, well, you know what? I don't see poverty when I work with students or when I work with children. I don't see race. I don't see gender. When I work with children, I just see children. This is what I've heard. This is what people have told me before. And I just want to, ask this one question. What does it mean if we need to take away or ignore a part of who children are, a part of who communities are, a part of who parents are, in order to accept or acknowledge their humanity and potential. Diversity is critical. Inclusivity is critical to the work that we're all doing to improve reading outcomes and reading opportunities for children. But in an effort to be inclusive, we have to be careful not to ignore unique challenges or strengths that particular children or groups of children or communities may have. And so I think that, it's really important to think about this, because what does it mean? What does it mean for Black boys if when they come into a classroom, they're made to feel as if they need to sit the way they talk outside, or they need to sit the way they walk outside, or they need to, leave some part of who they are outside? How would you feel, right? If, every day when you entered into a space, you felt as if part of you was not welcome, or part of you wasn't recognized, or part of you wasn't valued. Cultural competency, again, is about humility. There are children, and Herbert Cole, in his book, I Won't Learn From You, he talks about this idea that children make a conscious decision whether or not they'll learn from someone. And for far too many Black boys, they are having reading experiences in school that are leading them to conclude or to decide, you know what? Yeah, you can keep that reading stuff. You can keep all that learning, all that school stuff. I'm gonna do me. They're made to believe or feel as if somehow who they are and reading are these two separate things. And all I want to encourage all of you to do is to really be intentional and think about what are the types of content experiences that can let little Black boys know that actually, no, you can be exactly who you are, and still be a reader, still be a learner. Deficit frameworks, deficit thinking is something that refers to looking at essentially what kids don't know and what they can't do. And right now we're in the midst of the pandemic. We have the vaccine, but Rona is making a resurgence. And as I listen to a lot of the conversation around, working with and supporting, Black boys and, children living in poverty, a lot of the conversation is focused on what kids have lost, the learning loss, and all these other things, which are real. These are real things. But even with all of the challenges, all the lost learning and everything else that has happened, children, Black boys, still come into a classroom or into an after-school program with interest, with strengths, right? And so those things really are about asset-based or strength-based thinking. And that's really one of the things that I would like to encourage you all to think about in your work, working with Black boys and with other children, is, okay, they have these deficits or perceived deficits, right? What are their strengths? What are their assets? And how can we use those to really build them up and to improve in these areas? Now, when I talk about deficits, I want to give you a concrete example of some of the ways that it plays out. Well, sometimes it's a deficit in terms of, well, they're behind. They're not on grade level, they're not on this reading level, they're not doing this. Or it may be a situation where the behavior is bad, right? Or perceived to be bad, or they're perceived to, not be able to focus. And so, one of the things that I've noticed sometimes in doing read alouds and, schools across the country, is that in some instances, the fact that, some children may have, certain challenges in terms of behavior management, it leads to kind of ideas that are militaristic, right? I've walked into classrooms and started doing read alouds and had teachers like run over and interrupt me and go, volume zero, volume zero, volume zero. And I'm like, whoa, 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 no, I got it. We having fun. It's okay while I'm doing a read aloud for them to laugh and have a good time. And so, as I think about, what can help support, Black boys and children in general, I think developing effective group management and classroom management strategies that allow you to have fun and be excited and be expressive, but also be able to bring it back and focus and refocus students. Now, I spoke about the importance of asset-based thinking, asset-based learning, and that's really the programs that we were sharing with you earlier today through Barbershop Books. That's what it's really about. We asked Black boys, what do you like to read? And we bought those books. And another thing that I think is really important in terms of strategies for supporting Black boys is diversity at the table, the decision-making table. When curriculums are getting selected, when curriculums or content is being developed, when presentations are being designed for parents or families, making sure that there's diversity around the table. And I'm not just talking about, skin level deep diversity, although that's critically important to make sure that, there are different representations, but also making sure that there are different ideas, right, that are represented. Because it's really important. We all have blind spots. I have blind spots, you have blind spots, but it's when diversity is present that we don't all have the same blind spots. Now, Pedagogy of the Oppressed really is an amazing book that talks about how teaching and learning should be two-way, and that students shouldn't be viewed as empty buckets to be filled with facts, but as co-creators in their learning. And I think that asset-based approaches are steeped in this idea, because if you want to get input from a child, it says that, guess what? Your ideas are valuable. Your ideas are important. Now, I'm going to wrap up today by just sharing a quick statistic with you all. Every 2 years or so, Scholastic produces what they call, I think, their Kids and Family Reading Report. And I think this may be like a year older, but today, about over 50% of students, when they were surveyed about what they look for when choosing a book, over 50% of them, this, I think in the last year, this has increased over 10%. They indicated that their favorite thing, the thing they look for, is a book that will make them laugh. So if the majority of children, Black boys especially, are saying that they want books that will make them laugh, but too often when books are being selected, they deal with slavery or civil rights, should we be surprised that so many Black boys do not identify as readers and do not read for fun? If you ask Black boys, what are some of the things that you might hear? Often it may not be the books that come up on the list that often are designed for them. Now, that doesn't mean that these books aren't important. These books are important, they're critical, but they shouldn't be the only books that Black boys have access to. And they shouldn't be the only books that are being recommended to Black children and Black families. I wrote my Gross Greg book because as a kindergarten teacher, as a first grade teacher, and as a comedian, I was just so fed up with not finding funny books that featured, a Black boy. You call them boogers. Greg calls them delicious little sugars. I'm gonna stop there. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Alvin. That was great. I was really enjoying and actually very much laughing at the Greg story. That was fabulous. Where can people find your information? Where can they find out more
You know where
about
they can
Barbershop?
find my information? I am going to go back and share my screen one more time. Let me just share this. So if you would like to get more information about me, you know, speaking engagements, keynotes, or just learning more about my work, you can visit alvinirby.com. If you would like to learn more about Barbershop Books and the work that we do, you can visit our website at barbershopbooks.org. And I will just type our website in the chat. Give me 1 second here, barbershopbooks.org. Also, you can connect with us on social media at Barbershop Books. Do we have time for questions, or are we all done?
I haven't seen any questions come in the chat. Maybe we can give it a second, see if anyone wants to type one in, and then we can take any questions that they have.
Sure. I would love to hear any questions, any feedback, anything whatsoever that you would like to share. You know, I always welcome, you know, feedback and ideas on, you know, what you liked, what you found relevant or engaging. You know, that's always a great place to start.
Wonderful. Somebody said there is a question in the Q&A. I don't have access to the Q&A to see those questions. I don't know if you have access.
Oh, you know what? Is that on the app? It may be on the app. Let me just open up the app here and see what we find.
There's often a Q&A right inside Zoom, but I don't.
Question asked. There is a question.
Wonderful.
How does one become affiliated with Barbershop, the Barbershop Books Initiative?
Oh, wonderful.
Is this region specific? No, we currently have barbershop partners in 100. Well, the last I checked, it was a little over 120 barbershops across 54 cities and 21 states. And so, you know, individual community members, a church, a grandma, you know, in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, can say, I want to sponsor my grandbaby barbershop. And they just go to our website and they can sponsor their local barbershop. And within 2 weeks, we'll ship out program materials to that barbershop. But we also have worked with literacy organizations or other just community-based organizations, school districts, library systems who want to implement the Barbershop Books program across an entire neighborhood or across an entire city. If you want to learn more about our Reading So Lit classroom or our Reading So Lit summer program, you can certainly reach out to us through our website or through social media. I do see some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Okay, would love, to have you come visit. Oh, the book fairies. Hey, book fairies sound amazing. I want a book fairy. Are they like the tooth fairy? They just put books under kids' pillows? I'm joking. That was a joke. I know you all are doing amazing work. I know y'all are doing amazing work. We have until 5:15. So that's great. We have time for a few more questions. I do see another question in the app. So if you want to put a question here in the chat, you can certainly do that right here in the Zoom. If you would like to ask a question in the question section on the app, you know, I'll look at it. But I'm going to read the one that just popped up in the app. How do I get the male figures more involved in our school wide literacy initiatives? Well, I think part of it comes back to exactly what we're talking about today. You know, as educators, we know what we want other people to do or what we want them to learn. The question is, do we know how to communicate it in a way that would be relevant and engaging? Do we know how to create the type of experiences that audience would find relevant and engaging? So I would say start with conversations with those fathers. Find out what they like to do. If he's a mechanic, maybe you can find a children's book about cars and ask him if he would be willing to do a read aloud, but don't just leave them out there to like sink or swim, but hopefully give them a little tip sheet or give them a short video modeling different read aloud strategies. You don't have to hold the book the whole time, so that they, give them some basic management tools so that, because how kindergartnens can be. When they're like sharks, they sense they don't know what they're doing. Oh yeah, I'm gonna lose it right now. So set them up for success, find out what they're interested in, and then find ways to bring their interest into whatever it is that you're looking, to have them do. Also, I think messengers matter. Messengers. I remember one time someone said, I heard about your program, so I run an after school program, so I went with a bunch of books to one of your barbershops, and the barber started saying, no, I don't want those, please leave. And I was like, oh no, like that's not, anything that we would want to happen. But I said, one of the things we've learned working with Black barbershops is that messengers matter. And so sometimes, even though you may want to be the messenger to talk to whoever it is you're looking to gauge, maybe you may not be the best messenger to get the outcome that you want. And that's where the humility comes in, right? And let me give you a perfect example of what I mean. When I taught kindergarten and first grade, sometimes a child may decide, you know what, I've been having an okay day up to now, but I think right now I just want to lose it. I just want to go crazy in the classroom and run around or start screaming or whatever. And, I remember sometimes what I would do is I would write a little note. And if it was first grade, because, the kids could read, I would staple the note. And then I would say, you know what? Miss Jones, she needs this pencil so bad. Could you take this to her classroom for me? And then 15 or 20 minutes would go by and the other students would be like, where did Chris go? He been in the bathroom a long time. And I'll say, oh, no. I think he was helping Miss Jones with something. And do you want to know what was on the note? It said, I'm about to lose it. Can you keep him for about 15 to 20? And you know what's crazy? Sometimes if I went to go get the student and I would peek through the window, he was sitting there like an angel, like raising his hand, contributing. And I'm like, that's not how he was acting in my class. That is not how he was acting. But guess what? Sometimes it's about the messenger, right? Some moments require a different approach, right? That we might not have thought about. And so I just want to encourage you to be open to the idea that even if you have a good idea, sometimes you may not be the best messenger. Just because you may be the best messenger doesn't mean you have a good idea, right? But taking the time to engage the audiences that you're looking to target and really think about and incorporate what they're telling you. People ask us, how do you choose your books for barbershop books? Like, what is your formula? And I just tell them, we asked little Black boys what they wanted to read. And then we bought the books that the little Black boys said they wanted to read. And then we took the books we bought and put them in the bar. It literally is not anything else other than that. It really isn't, rocket scientists for us, but really just figuring out how do we get that information from them in ways that allows us to, streamline it, streamline the process across areas, across regions, across the country. Any other questions, from anyone who would like to, share a question?
I haven't seen any more come on in, but I'll say thank you again for being here and for sharing your information. I can't wait to go check out your website and see the list of books that the boys picked, because I think there's going to be some favorites of mine on there as well.
So are we wrapping up then?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Well, you said that I was very interesting and very entertaining. Well, guess what? Just because certain content is required for students to learn, that does not mean that the learning experiences that they have, just like this was entertaining and interesting and engaging for you, I feel that we have a equal obligation to take the time to think about how we can make the content that we share and the experiences that we create in our classrooms and our programs equally entertaining, equally interesting, and engaging. Thank you so much for being so inspirational. Well, I appreciate that. I will take that, but I also want to thank all of you. It is not every day that I get to be on a call with so many amazing people who are working so hard to help the babies read. And so I want to say a big thank you to you all. Greetings from New Haven. I look forward to connecting with all of you. And please do reach out. We have about 5,000 books right now that were curated by Barbershop Books that we are looking to distribute to schools and community-based organizations within the next month or so. And so we are right now vetting those schools and organizations for how they're going to use the books, and it's free. And so if you are a school or part of an organization that would like to receive, anywhere from, all that we ask is that you're serving at least 50 children, and we can ship anywhere from a few hundred books to over 1,000 books to these community partners who are improving book access for the children they serve. All right. This has been a lot of fun for me. Well, you all said it was engaging and entertaining for you. Well, it was a lot of fun for me as well. Well, I would love to hear from you, Lori. I would love to know if there were any things that stood out for you, since we have a few minutes here.
Sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed the idea of the messenger, because you're right. We have a diverse group of students in front of us. But we also have diverse backgrounds and where we come from, and I think that is important to think about. Like I actually grew up near New York City, but I work in upstate New York. And I remember I didn't get upset with my students often, but I raised my voice once or twice, and they used to tell me that the New York would come out when I got upset. And I was like, I didn't realize I had an accent, as they called it, but it was one of those things that my message did shift a little, when I needed to in those moments. And I think that's important. And I also love the idea of bringing in experts and bringing in your community into the classroom. I think that is super important to give students an idea of different backgrounds, expose them to different career opportunities, and to just some different voices. I taught 6th grade English. And one year I had some dads actually reach out. They wanted to build something with the students. So we built birdhouses and we put them around the school in the classroom. And it was such a great experience for our kids.
When you
it may not have related to English, but it was great.
I mean, when you can walk around your school and see something that you created with people that you identify with, I think that has an impact on the extent to which you identify with your school, the extent Absolutely. To which you identify with the things that your school, the values, the culture, all those things. So I think that's a great example.
Yeah, and it was great to get those dads involved, so we were happy to have them. All right, I think we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Alvin. I've learned so much from you. Like I said, I can't wait to go out to your websites and check everything out.
Please do. Well, it was a pleasure. Everyone, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.